But a quote generally takes 15 to 25 hours to do. Ultimately, if you're giving a client a quote that's not accurate in terms of the cost you're expecting to pay, you're already shaving off your margin. Do you even know as a builder the way that you work? Really, when you start a project, you want to be sort of saying, what's my profit margin going to be? And being able to stick by it. Having positive cash flow doesn't necessarily mean your business is going to thrive either. If you want to invest that time to grow your business and make millions and millions and millions, go ahead. You can definitely use a system for that.
This is Professional Builder's Secrets, the #1 podcast to help you grow your building company safely and securely. Brought to you by the Association of Professional Builders. Join us every week as we talk to industry experts and your fellow professional builders on everything you need to know to generate more leads, more sales, and higher margins while improving the building experience for your clients.
We have another exciting episode from the Professional Builder's Secrets podcast. Joining us today is Julian Krishnan, Senior Partner Manager for Buildxact. Julian, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me, mate. Appreciate it.
Well, listen, let's start off by you telling me a little bit about Buildxact and your role with them. And, what does it do?
So Buildxact, we're an estimating and job management software. We're evolving to be more than that, which we'll come to a bit later on as we chat. But yeah, Buildxact at its core, we're an estimating and job management system for builders and trades. It's really targeted to that builder space, but we do have a bunch of trades that use us as well.
How did Buildxact and you sort of get together, and how did you get started?
Buildxact started as an estimating platform about 11, 12 years ago, I think now. It's working out to be. And from my understanding, I wasn't here at the time, but there was a heavy involvement from Master Builders Victoria because there wasn't really, a system that builders very well. There was a lot of software and apps and things like that worked better for trades. But I always say this, for every 10 plumbers, there's one builder. For every 10 sparkies, there's one builder. So the market isn't as big compared to the trade sort of system. So now we've built Buildxact. It's really taking off. Me personally, how I started, I was actually at MYOB 2018. I was a partner manager there, looked after bookkeepers, accountants, and I kind of got tapped on the shoulder to come over. And look, at the time, Buildxact, we were a startup business, really small. And I was just really excited by the kind of growth potential of the company. So I remember starting in, compared to MYOB, and, we had a team, I think I was number 19. When you sort of walk into an office, you can imagine the difference in terms of what MYOB would do versus what Buildxact was doing. But I loved that. I loved the kind of, David, our CEO, was just like next to me pretty much, and you could ask questions and things. So that's how I got in there. And yeah, I was initially brought in to look after our partners. So that's really anyone, bookkeeper, accountant, coaches, consultants, estimators, kind of all the way up to the industry partners, industry associations. So I've probably got the widest scope in terms of Buildxact. I speak to the most different types of people that we have, which is great for me because I hear it from, all different angles about, direction of the business, how we're performing, etc.
Now, what are some of those key value propositions for Buildxact? You talked a little bit about the fact that you're known to be the estimate side of things, but what else, are some really key significant value propositions?
At its core, really, we're trying to help builders live a better life, and that's personal and professional in their business. And it really kind of comes down to some of the key things that builders struggle with at the moment. So we know for a fact builders spend way too long on their quotes. Sort of 15 to 25 hours is what a quote takes a builder to complete. So we help them with 80% faster takeoff. They can get that done a lot quicker, appearing more professional in terms of how they're quoting. Generally, the quotes aren't great that builders produce. And then when it comes into the job management side, you're talking the whole scope of the job management process is communicating with the clients, scheduling your work, cost tracking against it. We've got live supplier integration now as well, which means that, they can connect to their preferred supplier and get that live pricing from them. So there's a whole heap of things we do. And, at its core, an end-to-end estimating and job management system. I think that's the biggest thing that sets us apart. There are other softwares that they only do estimating or they only do job management. We're an end-to-end system.
Now, you alluded to the fact that you help with time management when working with estimates, but how does Buildxact make that positive impact for builders in their day-to-day business operations?
Yeah, so I mean, a quote generally takes 15 to 25 hours to do, and that's to get that back to the client. I was actually at an event the other night, and there was a guy actually in the audience, and he said he did a $2.2 million home, got the quote out in 2 hours. So there's not one specific thing that we help with that makes that possible. It's a bunch of things. So that's getting your pricing into. You don't need to check on your pricing, whether that's in the form of a live integration or if it's just a supplier loaded Excel sheet that you've put into the system. So it's getting that access, it's building out templates so you know how you work. So build a template based on that and what kind of items and pricing that you would normally put in there. Then it's actually using our takeoff platform, which is really the thing that when people see that, that's the real buzz feature. When you see a plan on the screen and you're dot around and you've just worked out the floor plan square meter, or you've done the interior walls or the roof and whatever it is, it's being able to do that all on screen and be able to go back and edit it really easily. That takes a hell of a lot of time to do manual takeoffs. And, a lot of these guys are sitting there at 7, 8 p.m. at night trying to do all that after a full day's at work, when they probably want to be sitting down and relaxing and spending time with their family. So we speed up all that process, and then actually drawing the quote up, that takes a hell of a long time as well, because most people use Microsoft Word. Now, if I was putting a quote through on Microsoft Word for $400,000, not very easy to do. So all of those little things kind of aid, they all shave off, a few hours. And then before you know it, I've just done a quote 10 times faster than the exact same business down the road who's doing it all manual.
Now, why is it so important to have accurate estimates? You talked about the time being saved, but let's talk about, keeping the estimates a little bit more accurate. Why is that so important for for a builder?
Well, it's you charging for your time and the materials that you're actually getting. It's a weird one with builders that a lot of them don't take this as seriously as they probably should, because, and look, I think that's probably changing a little bit now because people know the pricing increases that we've, seen in the industry over the last, 2 years or so. I think some of them are stabilizing a little bit, but ultimately, if you're giving a client a quote that's not accurate in terms of the cost you're expecting to pay, you're already shaving off your margin. Now, most people don't price their jobs with enough margin in them anyway. Sometimes they'll drop the margin to win the work, which, generally we want to try and avoid ever doing that. But once that happens, so let's just say your estimate isn't correct and you've just shaved, you've got a profit margin of, say, 15, 20%, maybe it's even less for some people, and you've just shaved 3% off because it's not an accurate estimate. That's down to 17, 12, 13%, depending where you started. Then you've got some cost, increases on the job, which can happen, or some mistakes, whatever it is, you need to redo something. And before you know it, you're down in that sort of 8, 7% profit margin. And that's like really, really dangerous territory when you get there. So you're potentially running risks of you're not being able to complete the build because you haven't priced it correctly, which means when the money's coming in, the cash flow isn't in a positive balance. So you've got a whole heap of issues, but ultimately you can start from anything from having issues paying that job to potentially closing your business down. And really, when you start a project, you want to be sort of saying, what's my profit margin going to be? And being able to stick by it, because otherwise, like, what's the point? If you're not making any money, what's the point of doing it? Being a builder is I speak to some of these guys and they do way more hours than I do. And I just look at them and go, if you're not making money, like, why would you want to do that?
Right. Now, what can cause estimates to be inaccurate? Obviously you talked about the fact that you want it to be as accurate as possible. You're considering people with their time and their hourlies and the amount of energy they're doing. But what are some of the common things that causes those estimates to be inaccurate? And I'm assuming you have a few examples here.
Yeah. I mean, pricing and accurate pricing is a big one. We are starting to see people being a little bit more cautious with that now because we've had such an increase in prices that, people lost a lot of money on those jobs because they signed fixed price contracts, which is, very unavoidable at the time. But now people are a bit more cautious of it. But yeah, you're talking, how accurate is your pricing from your supplier? Are you someone that goes and chases it out very regularly, or are you someone that just has an Excel sheet you've populated in there and it's 6 months old, but going and getting it all from your suppliers and editing your Excel sheet and changing it all up? Most people just kind of go, I'm going to do that at some point, and then they just never do it. So that's your first point there, is just how accurate is the pricing that you've got from your suppliers or your subby rates. Then it kind of just goes off in a million different ways of how it can be an issue. And, you're talking manual estimating, human error straight away. And you're talking people working late at night doing this, how much issues they're going to be with, you might have not completed a takeoff correctly. You haven't done a measurement properly. And then it's, do you even know as a builder the way that you work? We see a lot of people that will just kind of say, oh yeah, to build that wall, whatever, supply and install rates, and they'll just put a bulk rate and that'll be it. There's no way of breaking that rate down. Was it the labor that went over? Was it materials that went over? Do we even know that it went over? So are you aware of how you work and where you currently have issues? And the best way to do that is cost tracking. If you don't cost track, you're kind of in a situation where you started a job, you're halfway through it. How do you know how that job is performing? And those findings will base how accurate your estimates are for future projects.
Now, you talked a little bit about sometimes if builders don't have time to update their rates or their subbies or their suppliers, things get sort of missed. Is there a way that Buildxact sort of prompts that or allows them to stay on top of that or stay updated? Because it sounds like there's a little bit of updating that's required to keep your prices current.
Yeah, well, if you're doing things manual, it's a lot of time to do. Like I after knowing how Buildxact works, I don't know how they would do it manual. Probably a very, very expensive and very, very formula driven Excel sheet. Maybe you could do it, but it's like, why would you put all that time to do it? So yeah, I mean, ultimately with Buildxact, you've got really two options. You can either build your own pricing from suppliers that have sent you that. So let's just say I've got my supplier, they've given me an Excel sheet with the pricing. I load it into Buildxact. We use our kind of wizard to figure out which columns and things like that. And then from there, you use that pricing. And when you get, and maybe you just set a reminder of yourself to get one every month or something like that. You go get the new list, you upload that. Buildxact will figure out, hey, these are the same items. What's the price? Has it changed? If it has changed, it updates. And anything that you use that price on will update. So if you've used a timber item, for example, you've got templates for single story new builds, double story new builds, renos, whatever it is, and you've used that timber item, once you've updated that timber item, it'll update in every single area.
So it's almost like predictive in many ways too,
exactly,
right?
Yeah, it's automated. You just update it once through the upload and it will do it for you. And then if you've got a live integration, that's even easier. You don't even need to do any of the updating yourself because the supplier handles all of that.
Gotcha. So when it's updated on the supplier end, then the software picks it up as well.
Exactly, yeah. So all you need to do is use the item that you want from, whether that's Bunnings or Mitre 10 or whoever it is. You just use that item that they've given you in the price list, in the catalog. And then when that updates from them, it will update in all the... Yeah, so the same thing happens. It's just you take out all that first part.
And I'm assuming Buildxact integrates with these different platforms as well. So it's easy to have that API integration to get the pricing updates. Yeah.
So we've got a bunch on our platform. If you go into integrations, if you're using us in supplier integrations, there's heaps there. So there's, you've got your big retailers and then you've got the smaller ones that are more, locally based.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about job costings and how it can impact overruns as well. And how does that accurate estimate and live supplier pricing impact that estimating process as well?
Yeah, well, obviously the more live pricing you're getting is going to set you on the right track. But, even still, labor rates and things like that, that's still going to come down to how accurate is your predictions based on the labor. There's it's very hard to say that something's going to take a certain amount of hours because, someone calls in sick or someone isn't available or they just work a bit slower that day or you've got someone more inexperienced. So those things are always going to be a little bit more difficult to predict than material prices if they're coming in live. But ultimately, the more accurate you can get going into that process will hopefully set you on, a positive, flow in terms of managing that project. But really what you want to be doing is as you're starting to receive and bills and pay for things is sort of looking at it and going, hey, we thought we were going to spend 10 grand on this. We actually spent 12 grand on this. And what does that show us? Well, it shows us we've gone over budget by 20%.
Right.
What does that do? And the problem is most people can't tell you down to a line item. Now, you don't necessarily have to tell you for a line item, but if you could roll up and sort of say, well, look, I want to, for a particular component of the build, maybe I want to see how my labor tracked on that component, or maybe my material cost. So, if you're building a brick wall, your most expensive components are going to be, your bricks and your labor. If you're building a frame, it's going to be your timber and your labor as well. So if you can at least cost track those areas and know kind of how you're tracking good or bad against it, and ideally as it's happening, it's only going to set you, off in the right direction. Because what a lot of people do is they just get these bills in, they pay the bills, they've got cash coming in, they get a progress payment from a bank or from the client, money coming in. So in their mind, they're thinking, well, whoop-de-doo, I'm great. I've got cash in the bank constantly. But just because you've got positive cash flow doesn't mean you're actually making money, because when those payments slow down for whatever reason, or you have a break or something, that's when it all catches up. So the ability to job cost and job track as you're going is really, really important, because you can manage that as it's happening the earlier you know it.
Right. Now, let's talk about the unspoken dialogue with builders. What should every builder know about the estimate process and what you guys offer? And also, why aren't more builders using this? Is it a hesitance? Is it a fear of automation and technology? Is it just the fact that they're stuck in a rut? Like, where do you think the challenges are or the resistance comes from?
Do you know what? I think what's happened was that there's been estimating software in the past, and the companies that were around and promoting their products, 5, 10, 15 years ago, I think they made a software that was really difficult to understand. So Gotcha. What you needed was people to come and implement it. You needed hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of training. It took you ages to get your head around it. And I think that's caused a bit of a fear to go into it, and also a false sense of, I don't need software unless I'm really big. Like the amount of people that I speak to that say that and be like, oh, I only build 2 or 3 homes a year, I don't need software. Or I'm not big enough for software. It's like, you're absolutely big enough for software. That's literally our target market. You build 1 home a year, you can use us and you'll be able to figure us out very, very quickly. Right. So I think that's the thing I would probably kind of always touch on is, we've gone past that early adopter stage of the product. So all those people that are really forward thinking, tech savvy, those people are already using software. We're now in that stage where most people know they need to use software. It's just kind of, giving them a bit of a kick to go and use it. And generally that's done by someone in the business, or someone at home is giving the builder, a bit of a push to do it. But what I would say is, don't stress too much if you think, I'm not good at computers. I spoke to someone yesterday who said the same thing. And I spoke to his wife today on the phone just to, talk to her about how to use a system. And, I think she said something like, oh, he doesn't even know where certain keys are on the keyboard and things like that. You don't need to know and be really tech savvy to use Buildxact, because it's free training. It's a really, really simple tool to use. I didn't have any training when I first started. We didn't have a training program or anything when I started. I just watched the videos and I know how to use it. So That's one of the things I would say. Don't worry about it.
Now, you talked a little bit about the fact that some people have this thing about, it could be a blind spot. We're building 1 to 2 homes. We don't need software. What are some of the other blind spots that you encounter with builders, and what you hear from the front lines? And what are some of the things that builders need to be aware of, that it is actually a blind spot?
Yeah, I think how you interact with your customer is really important, because often in the business, a builder is a silo. They don't often let anyone else kind of into the business in terms of managing things, because everything has to go through them, where it's phone calls, text messages, invoices, quoting, everything kind of runs through them. Whereas with the software, you can kind of really allow other people or automation to do a lot of the work that you're doing currently. So, I know a guy in Victoria, and he basically has his team doing all his takeoffs for him. And he just goes in and just checks it really quickly, because he's taught them how to do it. Much easier to do on a computer than doing it all manual and managing estimating processes. Then, client interaction is, I call people and they're answering the phone when they're on the roof, and, the professionalism side to how they send emails, quotes and things like that maybe can leave a bit to be desired. So we help them with that using a customer portal. They can load pictures and, really just kind of bridging the gap between some of those really big builders. Like, I know if I go to a big builder, I know I'm probably going to get this really cool tool, and I can go and send pictures and I can get updated and things like that. My maybe hesitation is with a really small builder is, you might get that personal touch, but also if that builder becomes really busy or gets sick or something like that, it's like, I know the project probably stops So that's one of the hesitations for me, is that, maybe for other people as well, is how's that communication going to be? And, we've all heard horror stories and stuff, and you always want to hope for the best. But I think client interaction in terms of how you communicate is, I think a lot of people are starting to get on and understand that. We live in a different age now with Instagram and social media and adverts and things like that. It's getting harder for smaller builders to keep up with the bigger ones.
Now, what are some of the best practices when it comes to estimates as well? You talked a little bit about, considering the client journey and the interaction and experience, but what are some tips that you or Buildxact likes to give builders when they are using Buildxact?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately what you want to get to is to be as accurate with the items you're using in an estimate. So you don't really want to be quoting jobs forever and sort of rolling all in numbers up to one and sort of saying, this is just a supply and install rate that I have for this. Ideally, you want to be in a situation where you can be as accurate as possible. Now, that doesn't mean, going in and adding every screw, nut, bolt, because that would just be ridiculous. But, maybe for those kind of things, you've got a miscellaneous section under each category for, your brickwork, your timber, your cabinetry, whatever it is. And then you've got, real prices for the bigger items. And, they're the ones, if you go 15% over on your screws, it's not going to, no one cares. But if you go 15, 20% over on your timber price, then that's a real big issue. So everyone's going to be different on this, but try and get as detailed as you possibly can that's relevant for you and your business. I mean, you go too detailed, it's a bit of diminishing returns on that. But I would say start off, definitely get all the training and support that you can from Buildxact. It's free training. From there, start off simple. So, maybe, as I said, maybe not what I said not to do, maybe start doing that at the start just to get your head around how to do it. So let me figure it all out. Let me get how it works. Okay, now I've got supply and install rate, $150 a square meter or something. Maybe now I'll break it down into materials and labor and cost track against that, and then break your materials further down and just take yourself on that journey slowly and don't try too hard to, put every single little thing in there. And, as you learn the software, you'll probably change how you do things anyway, because a lot of people come from how I do it in Excel sheets, how I'm going to do it in Buildxact. That's not necessarily the case.
When it comes to the actual building industry, how do you feel like it's evolving? Because it sounds like there's a lot more technology now. There's a lot more sort of embracing the future of automation. Do you think that the building industry is behind, or do you feel like there's things that are progressing it?
It's progressing. I mean, efficiency will always drive what actions, happen. Some industries are a bit slower to adopt that. And a lot of the times the efficiencies are there, just people just are slow to adopt it. And that's kind of that's the issue with, trades and construction in general. Like it's been an industry where technology has been slower to adopt. But we're in that stage now where I think people are understanding, hey, if this is going to save me 5, 10, and 20, 30 hours a week, a subscription cost is, peanuts compared to that. So, we're seeing people more open to having that. And what we're seeing is not just the individual business owners, we're seeing other people outside of that. So like suppliers wanting to come in. So we're going to start seeing more automation, more efficiency creation by dealing with a bunch of people through the platform. So that's where eventually we're going to get to. Where I think, if you say to me in, 20 years time, where we're going to be, we're probably going to have, brands, manufacturers, tons of suppliers all using Buildxact. You're probably going to have trades and subbies and stuff all using Buildxact through the builder and things like that. So, and the customers as well. That's where we're going to get to. We're just going to have more people communicating and working together through a platform like ours. So yeah, I mean, it's really exciting to see it happening. Just people need to, all the efficiencies are there. You just got to get up and go for it.
What should builders be ready for long term? I mean, it sounds like we're at the precipice of change, but what do you think that the builders really need to be prepared for coming up?
I mean, I think competition is going to be harder, especially in the next, I think maybe the last couple of years has kind of maybe warped people's perception a bit that work's always going to be there. And I touched on this before about the cash flow issue, in that people, generally the idea is that if you've got bad cash flow, your business is going to close. And whilst that's true, having positive cash flow doesn't necessarily mean your business is going to thrive either. Because what we've often had is, I've just paid this these bills. Cool, no problem. I've got a progress payment coming in. So in my bank, I've always got 50, 60 grand sitting there and everything looks all hunky-dory and rosy. But that's because I've got so many jobs on at the same time. You have a few months off where it becomes a little bit harder for you to get work. You haven't necessarily cared about the cost tracking and how accurate your estimates are.
Right.
So when that work slows down a bit, which I don't really believe this argument that, work's just going to, completely crash. I don't believe that for a second. But if it does slow down, and that might mean a 10% decrease in the amount of projects you have. It might only be as much as that to really, really put some businesses into strife. So I would just say, make sure your numbers are accurate. Be ready for that to potentially happen, and if that's, having a bit more cash in the bank ready to go, or, I had a chat with someone recently who's just sort of said, try and, get as much money as you can ready if you've got slow payments on bills, just to make sure your business is safeguarded. So that'd be my recommendation.
Now, you talked a lot about, paying attention to that prospect or that client experience. What do you think clients today are expecting from the builders and the building process as well?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of builders, especially the ones that really run off of word of mouth, I think, and especially that are dealing with maybe older people, the mentality that those people had is different to what younger people have now. Obviously, it's quite hard for young people to build and own homes anyway, but that's going to change. And we're in that sort of generation now where you've got, like, I'm 34, you've got 25, 26, even 30-year-olds that had most of their childhood on social media. So social media is becoming a thing that people, like, it seems like most of us kind of think, social media is just something that we adjusted to when we were, a young adult or an early adult or whatever, But now there's people that all they know is social media. All they know is that way of interacting. They need communication instantly, and that's kind of what they expect. They don't expect if I'm going to email you and you get back to me in 4 days. That's not an expectation that most people, are happy with now. Normally it's, I expect 24 hours to turn around. Right. So how you communicate with your clients, and that's from, quoting, it's your brand presence, websites, social media, all those kind of things really matter now to people. And, as people in the probably I would say 5-6 years generation below me, in the next 10 years, those guys are going to be in positions where they're buying homes, and, potentially for the builders that are building on that sort of maybe the cheaper end, they're not building the high end homes. You need to have a really good process in terms of how you're reaching these people. And I think that's why some of the big builders do well in that market, because social media, adverts, all that kind of stuff. So how you communicate with the clients when you end up speaking to them, how you attract them, all those kind of things are going to be way more important in the next few years.
How are builders that are on board with Buildxact embracing automation? Do they have certain people that handle it? For the ones that have trouble using the keyboard, do they delegate to other people? Who are the people that generally end up working with Buildxact in the building company space?
Yeah, I mean, really at its core, because we look after smaller builders, we probably wouldn't have, let's say wouldn't have, on average, we are one-man band, husband-wife teams, small groups of, people in the business. So you probably get up to about 10. That's sort of where we start where we stop servicing as well. So in some businesses, that's, admin people, it's people managing the project, it's maybe bookkeepers doing the invoicing and the cost tracking, against the purchase orders and bills that come in. So those people, 100%, we see a lot of partners really, really heavily involved in the business. And often, like I said earlier on, it's the partners that are generally giving the builder a bit of a kick to make use of efficiency. And often that's the wife that's at home that wants to spend more time with her partner and is basically saying, hey, look, you're spending way too long on the computer or not on the computer doing things manually. So the people that are embracing automation, that's chilling out with your family. It's maybe working in your business more. It's maybe doing the things that you want to do, sports, whatever it is, less stress. I mean, look, if someone said to me, I can do a quote in 2 hours versus 25 hours, 25 hours, when we put it down to it, for most of us, that's, the best part of 3 days, of work. So that's a lot of time. And that's you not even potentially winning the work. That's just you putting that in front of a customer who may have been just price matching you against someone else. So you maybe not even the first person they're going to go. I just want to say, I just want to make sure this other builder isn't, trying to, get an extra 10 grand out of me. So the people that are, embracing automation, they're running better businesses. We see that businesses do grow when they use Buildxact from when they start to where they finish, a couple of years later. It really becomes what the individual builder wants to get out of it. If they just want to say, look, I don't want to grow my business, I'm happy doing 2 or 3 homes a year. Cool. Use us, get the efficiency, get your life back. If you want to invest that time to grow your business and, make millions and millions and millions, go ahead. You can definitely use the system for that.
Now, what are some of those exciting features and what can our builders expect to get from Buildxact in the future? What are some of those things that they should be aware of?
Well, if you ever worked with anyone in product roles, they don't tend to like to tell people that are in more sales sort of focused roles what's coming, because when they do that, people like me go out and promise it to the world and it doesn't happen. But what you will start to see with Buildxact is more us working with more and more different types of people and businesses. So, at some point, and again, this isn't me saying it, but at some point you can imagine we're going to have a whole ecosystem of people that we work with, whether that's, more, it will be more suppliers, like 100%. That's definitely happening anyway, currently. And then you look at some point, I would say you're probably going to see, trades using it in somehow, shape or form. We already have that to some degree with request for quoting process. You'll probably see things like selections in Buildxact. You'll see more detailed reporting. All those kind of things are things that we're pretty open on that, eventually will be in the software at some point. It'll just depend on when some of that will happen. There's a heap of things coming. Again, it's one of those things that I don't necessarily want to give too much away because I get in trouble if we decide we're not doing it. But that's one of the things that we'll because it's an online platform, we're constantly updating and making bug fixes and changes and little things like that. So there'll be tons of little features that will come, and then there'll be bigger features that happen as they happen.
Now, for our listeners out there, can they try the product? Is there a trial at all for them to review?
Yeah. So it's a 2-week free trial. My recommendation is get the demo as soon as you possibly can, maybe even before you do the trial. The demo for me is the best way to learn the system through someone else. So that's, half an hour, 40 minutes, 45 minutes, depending on how many questions you might have. That'll give you a really good understanding of how Buildxact will work for your business. From there, I would say go and play around with the software. Now, the benefit of Buildxact is a month-to-month subscription. So if you start it for whatever reason, you don't like it, you can always cancel. I mean, we know fairly well that once people actually start using us and put a bit of time in, they very rarely cancel. So, there's no risk to our side generally. Once we get you up and running, it's like it really is a game changer for people. So, but yeah, trial. Just make sure when you click through, say Association of Professional Builders, because you'll get a 10% discount on the plan as well that you use.
Awesome. Well, it's been a pleasure speaking to you, and thank you for taking me into the world of the estimates out there. And I'm sure we'll speak to you in the future as well, Julian.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, Bosco. Appreciate you having me on.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for listening. Remember to subscribe to Professional Builders Secrets on your favorite podcast platform and leave a review. To learn more about how the systems at the Association of Professional Builders can help you grow your building company, visit associationofprofessionalbuilders.com. See you next time.